So I'm
And
just.
do you think they will maybe let you work from home 3 days a week, like after the initial few weeks? Do you think they will maybe let you work from home 2 days a week?
No. It's definitely 4 days a week. Most finance companies are. So it's not unusual. I prefer it, honestly. I did not enjoy hybrid. I prefer to get into my routine, and I'm much more of a morning person anyway. So I like to just kind of go and get going.
Perfect.
And it's not a US company, so I won't be doing all the evening calls because they're in Singapore.
That's good, actually.
Headquarters.
And how many employees do they have?
500, just over 500. So globally, so it's definitely high growth.
Perfect size. I think that's a very nice company size. My favorite, I would say. Yeah.
Good show.
Yeah. I know. I managed to get literally my perfect job. Unbelievably, I've been looking for a role like that for 6 years. So.
How did you get it, actually?
Through an agency, but I was going for another role, and I pulled out, said this isn't for me, and they said, oh, what about this one? I was like, oh, great. And then it just moved really fast, so it's been brilliant.
Congratulations. Hope it's gonna go well.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Good stuff. Sophia, can I kindly ask you to there's your video. Oh, we've now lost Sophia. Oh,
no, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. Right. Can everyone hear me now?
Yep.
Good stuff. I'm sorry to interrupt. That was a very nice conversation. And maybe when you start, Sarah, we can look into doing something with the club there.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's going to take a bit of time until you settle in. Nevertheless, my apologies, because that took much longer than expected. But at last, I managed to get the bleeding thing working. So, again, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Startup Talent Q&A. It's our 165th session. We've been doing these now for, dear Lord, over 4 years, since 29th of March 2021, where over 280,000 people have tuned in. But none of that would have been possible without people like Sarah, Margaret, today Sophia, and of course, Jeff as well. So if you panelists would like to drop your LinkedIn URLs in the chat and maybe a couple or a line about you, that would be great. And hopefully those in the audience or those listening to the recording may want to reach out to you. So that would be great if you wouldn't mind doing that. We've helped and answered about 3,000 founders, or founder questions rather, to be precise. During these times, we've held about 640 sessions. And we're currently helping people on a few topics. Mondays, as you can see today, it's talent. And then Tuesdays, it's product and tech. Wednesdays, it's growth. Thursdays, it's fundraising. The second Friday of each month, it's UK startup law. And third Friday of each month, it's UK. Can you hear me?
Now we can, yep.
Now, yes.
Jesus, Miriam Bleeding Joseph. Okay, so did you hear the part about the 6 sessions?
No.
Just you get to
No,
the end and that's when I cut out.
Oh dear. Okay. Anyway, so quick reminder to everyone, we run 6 regular sessions helping founders for free, hopefully go from startup to scale up. Monday's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, Thursday's fundraising, second Friday of each month it's UK startup law, and third Friday of each month it's UK startup finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time, and you can normally RSVP to any of them via our site startupscaleup.club. Although for some reason I hear today we are having some trouble with our website, and we are working on it to fix it and bring it up ASAP. We've also got some amazing WhatsApp groups with our community of founders, investors, experts on various fields, and operators, and of course our amazing mentors. On the other hand, as far as today is concerned, we are helping founders with whatever questions you may have on your talent journey, whether you want to know how and where to find the right people, how to perhaps interview them, or maybe how to empower them and train them. Any questions really to do with talent, today is the day to ask. I've got 4 amazing panelists with us today, and the way it works, it's quite simple. If you are on the live streams, whether you are on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, unfortunately, we are unable to monitor your questions live there now. So you'll have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. All of those should have, all of the live streams should have the actual link to join us. Otherwise, try our website. Hopefully it's working, startup2scaleup.club, and look for today's Q&A. On the other hand, for those of you that do make it here onto the actual call, all you have to do is type your question in the chat. We'll give you the mic, and then you can ask the team whatever you like. The agenda is quite simple. We'll go through some quick introductions. We'll then open it for some do's and don'ts from the amazing panelists here. And then after that, we will go through the Q&A. So without further ado, my name's Anton Call. I'm an Albanian in London working with startups normally right after they get investment. I embed within their teams and help them hire and keep the right people. I also do some growth advisory work with a few other startups. And lately, I've been helping some angels and family offices with their due diligence and their assessments. I guess we can go on to Sarah, Margaret, Sophie, and then Jeff, please. Take it away, T.
Hi, I'm Sarah Symes, and I've been an HR leader for more than 20 years. I don't want to say more than that, but mainly in the tech, finance, fintech sort of space, and very much a focus on high growth businesses. So that's been my main. I'm a Brit, but I've also lived and worked in Silicon Valley, and I'm based in West Berkshire. Thank you.
Hi there, it's Margaret. We have been working in the talent space for 20 years as well. I'm based in London. In terms of my experience, I've recruited for tech companies of different sizes, from startups to larger tech companies such as VMware or Expedia, hiring across all different levels and functions in different geographies across Europe, a little bit in the Middle East and Africa, US, Latin America, like you name it. And apart from that, I do interview, training and coaching, and happy to help with anything related to hiring and interviewing.
Is it me next?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. I'm Sophia. I mostly help early stage startups with everything to do people and talent. I'm working mostly with London companies, but I'm fully remote, and I have some expertise with AI companies and distributed teams.
Cool, and I'm Jeff Wellstead. I'm an American living in just outside London now for the last, 21 years, I think. And my entire career over here, from an HR perspective, has been to work with, startups to scale up organizations, typically, starting at 50, employees, going on up to 1,000 or so, and basically helping them work through all of those critical inflection points, which involves a lot of strategy and a lot of planning, a lot of tactical stuff, but also a lot of HR tech. And I really fell in love with the HR tech world, having worked at PeopleSoft, all the way back to in 2000. But I've always loved that angle. And I know that HR is just a target-rich environment for tech applications. And now with the advent of AI, it's been an absolute eye-opener in terms of the great things that AI can help the HR function do. So that's really kind of where I focus my time these days, is to kind of work with intact HR teams and try to kind of raise up their level of strategic impact, if you will, and then hand over a lot of the basic stuff to AI. And yeah, that's kind of, I'm here to kind of basically help on a lot of different levels, hopefully. Thank you.
Oh, that is amazing. Thank you very much, team. We've got an absolute superstar team today with us today. About some do's and don'ts. What horrible stuff have you seen out there, but also what interesting stuff that you think has massively helped companies early stage? So if we can think of one each, and if we can try not to use the same logic behind both, that would be great. So perhaps if we can start with, let's go with Jeff, since we went last, Jeff. Let's go with Jeff, and then we can go with Margaret, Sarah, and last but not least, Sophia.
Cool. I'll kind of like center mine based on I guess AI related types of things real quick. I would say a big don't, to start there, is don't assume that when you go out and buy HR technology that has AI baked into it, or so the salesperson is telling you, that you don't just gloss over that and just say, great, that sounds really cool and nifty, lots of shiny objects, that's all brand spanking new and super exciting. Be really careful, be very diligent in terms of pulling apart and really understanding what this AI element does and what level of transparency and control you as the owner of that or the user of that tool will have. I reference in particular Workday getting involved in a lawsuit whereby it's not just them who is basically found to be negligent and biased in terms of hiring, but also the buyers of and the users of that tool. So just be cautious about that. Do's: if you haven't got yourself tucked into AI activity and started to learn and understand the incredible impact and power of it, I would urge you to do so now, because we frankly should have been on that journey 6 months ago. But, and I don't say that just for me, the time has come that we all get super smart about this and the incredible things it can help us do. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
So in terms of one do, but I will expand on that a bit, is to build an efficient and structured hiring process early. So even if you're only hiring a few people, structure really matters. You know, you don't want to be just asking random questions to different candidates. So firstly, define the hiring team and process upfront, like who does the initial screen, who assesses technical skills, who will evaluate culture fit. So make sure that everyone is aligned on criteria and timelines to avoid mixed signals and wasting a lot of time. I've seen that happen so many times. You would also want to use a structured scorecard. So we use Greenhouse at Mixmax, but even if you don't have that, choose 3 to 5 core competencies, whether it's problem solving or technical depth or ownership, and then you would want to rate every candidate against those consistently, because that will help reduce bias and help make better decisions. And also you would want to have some kind of standardized interview flow, so decide what each stage will assess. So for example, recruiter screen, hiring manager interview, technical deep dive, culture or values interview, and founder call. So you would want to be consistent and prep your interviewers, especially if they're not used to interviewing. So share the scorecard, sample questions and expectations. And also, like, you would want to set realistic but fast timelines. So candidates hate waiting, try to keep your end-to-end process within 2 to 4 weeks maximum, and share timelines with candidates so they know what to expect. And also debrief as a team quickly, ideally on the same day, within 48 hours maximum. You would want to avoid letting great candidates go cold. And in terms of the don't wing it or don't change the process midway through. It just confuses candidates, introduces bias, and definitely don't let each interviewer just go with the flow or use different criteria. And also don't delay giving feedback, because the top talent won't wait.
Right. And just building on what Margaret said there, for me, it's about the culture. So great companies I've worked for have managed to keep that similar culture as they've grown and scaled. And the ones where it's not been so great is where they've sort of allowed that to shift. So my thinking is, making sure that you spend time figuring out what type of culture you want to have in your team and in your business, and then make sure you hire to it. So that is, really getting gritty on the attitudes and behaviors that you want to see, because those are the things that are going to get you through. Skills are important, but you can train and learn skills, but attitudes and behavior are really king, and will take you so much further in terms of your people.
Thank you. And last but not least, Sophia, please.
Hi. Yes, actually was going to do both of those things. So absolutely agree on sort of the alignment and making sure there's clear understanding of what to assess. And then the culture fit is so underestimated. The amount of times people just sort of assess it on the side when actually it's so key to the person's success is baffling to me. So I definitely would agree with both of those. In addition to that, I think you often have one leader or one person that is very much sort of the either the decision maker that often biases other interviewers quite a bit. And I think if you identify someone like that, it's really important to see whether it's actually working. Most of the time it's not. And then really educate the team on different interviewers. We bring different interviewers in because we want different aspects of the same thing. If we just have one person making the call, then we should just have that person assessing, right? So you can support them by making sure that the interview feedback is first submitted anonymously so that they can't sort of bias of other interviewers. You can sort of celebrate diversity of feedback and really make sure that it's clear that it's not about sort of giving the right answer, but of making sure that we implement and we integrate as many different facets of assessment into the process, and making sure that people assess different things, because oftentimes people have very similar conversations, especially when there is lacking structure, and then you have a very superficial assessment of a lot of different things rather than like depth of things that are the most important. And that's in terms of do's, and in terms of don't underestimate the candidate side of it. I think oftentimes people are surprised at the end of the process because someone didn't accept the offer, but actually the candidate is making arguably a bigger decision than the company itself, because for them it's their life, their career. So you shouldn't really be at offer stage with a candidate and be surprised by or not really be clear about what to expect in terms of response. There should be like transparency at all times about whether you think this is a role, an offer that's attractive.
Thank you very much, everyone. Just to double check, was it just me that couldn't hear Sophia very well a few times, or did the others hear Sophia okay?
I thought it was fine, Anton.
Okay, that's good. I guess it's my internet. Okay, well, thank you very much to all. Right here, quick reminder to those of you that are on the live streams, this is Startup Talent Q&A. It's our 165th session. We're going to be here for the next 33 minutes, taking questions from founders on how to find, hire, keep and empower the right people for your business. Those on the live streams, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, unfortunately, we are unable to monitor your questions there live. However, if you do want to join us and you've got questions, you'll have to do it here on Microsoft Teams. It's audio only, which means you can join us from anywhere via any platform or device. You can go to startup2scaleup.club, look at today's session, Startup Talent Q&A 165, click join. It's a quick registration that gets you a link to your email, and through that link you can join us here. Or if you look on all the live streams, there should be a link directly to this call, and you can do it that way too. If your questions today are on talent, please don't be shy. There literally are no wrong questions, and it's a learning curve for us all. Now, if there are on other matters, save them for the other events we run. Mondays, as you can see today, it's talent. Then Tuesdays, product and tech. Wednesdays, growth. Thursdays, fundraising. Second Friday of each month, it's UK Startup Law. And third Friday of each month, it's UK Startup Finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. You can RSVP to any of them via our site. Actually, you may also join our WhatsApp community. I'll post the link for the Startup Talent Q&A here, and you can join us to ask questions ahead of each Q&A, discuss whatever topic we mentioned and went through during the Q&A. You can do that after, and you can also connect with fellow founders, our panelists, and other people in the community as well. For now, I think we can go on to our first question. I'll put that in the chat for the team to read it, but I will read it out loud for those of you that are on the live streams. So if you bear with me for just a second. Okay, where are we? We founded a social enterprise startup in Belfast. We're currently at pre-seeds. We provide digital support services to local charities. With a remote team spread across the UK, I'm concerned about building a unified culture that reinforces our social impact mission, especially with minimal HR support. What strategies can we adopt to ensure that remote employees feel connected to our values and mission? And how can we facilitate team bonding activities, that align with our limited budget? Also, how can we measure and track our culture building efforts to ensure that we're truly effective? Oh boy, that's quite a big question, or many questions.
I can hear Lou chomping at the bit, though. She's all about the culture.
I see. Okay, so tell you what, let's bring Lou. Let's give her a mic as well then. Let me see. Let me present her. Louise, can you hear us? Are you audible?
Yes, I can.
You are. Very good. Well, just before you introduce yourself, since you weren't scheduled to be with us today, that's fine. If you don't mind, we'll let you go last, and then you can first introduce yourself and then fire away with what you think we've got today. So maybe we can start with Sarah, then Margaret, then Sophia, then Jeff, and last but not least, Louise. And Louise, if you don't mind, then introducing yourself.
Yeah, Doctor. Thank you.
Take it away, ladies.
Okay. Thanks, Anton. So remote culture, I think, we learned a lot about this during lockdown, or at least I did, probably more than at any other time. And I think it's challenging. It doesn't say how many people you have. So some of these things might depend on a little bit on the numbers, but I think
on
for me,
LinkedIn,
it's about...
I can only see, on LinkedIn, I can only see 4 people, but then I don't know, there might be others who aren't on LinkedIn.
Shall I carry on?
No, that was it. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was
it's fine.
trying to explain that from what I could see on their page, I could only see 4 people, so I don't know whether they have more that aren't actually on LinkedIn.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Yes. So with 4 people, I think, definitely keep it simple. But I think for me, it's about making sure that you, create that environment of sharing. So maybe it's like a weekly type call, check-in, where people get together and just encourage them to share something more personal, so you get to know the person first, and then a little bit about their role, and how they align with your mission, so that you get that connection point between the different individuals, and you start to kind of build those bonds. That would be my suggestion. I've seen that work well, where, for example, when I was running a small team, someone had an idea of sharing hobbies or interests, and we each learned something about the other that we hadn't known before, even though we'd worked together for some time. So literally doesn't have to be complicated. I think really keep it simple, but that alignment back to your mission, that will help you to make sure that people are, speaking the values, and really making that connection point to your mission. And then from a, how do you you measure it? I mean, ask for feedback. I think that's the only thing you can do. If you've got less than 10 people, then doing a survey won't be anonymous, so that might be tricky. But I've certainly done that in, you know, a 30-person company where I just did regular little pulse surveys, you know, what's working, what isn't, keep it really simple, maximum sort of 3 questions, and then take that feedback on board and encourage people to make the changes that are needed. But that's really all I can suggest for that one.
Okay, so did you say the team was just 4 people, right? So well, as Sarah said, I think the mission is definitely very important at every, like, at 4 people team, every conversation definitely matters. I think you want to make your mission the centerpiece of everything. So so you know, you can even like open every team meeting with 1-minute mission reminder, something like this week, you know, X charity set, and then you mention some impact story. And that's why this next sprint matters. And also talk about the why regularly, not just the what. Like, why are you building this? You know, what impact are you seeing? Because that will create that intrinsic motivation and bond the team emotionally, and it doesn't cost you a penny as well. And also, when you have one-to-ones with people, because with such a small team, your one-to-ones, you know, for now are your culture. So use your one-to-ones to check how each person is feeling, what they are proud of, where they actually need support. You know, ask them questions like, where do you feel most connected to our mission right now? Or what's something you wish we did more of as a team? Because that builds trust and gives you those early cultural signals. And even though the team is very small, you probably don't have time for like a lot of activities, but you do need some consistent touch points. So maybe like a weekly win round, you know, maybe 15 minutes on Friday. What went well? One mission related win, you know, what are you grateful for? And maybe like a monthly, you know, mission coffee, 30-minute casual chat with no agenda, where someone shares a charity story, personal reason they join, or just something that they've learned. So just keeping it light, consistent. And I think at such a small team, 4 people, how you work together is really your culture, right? So making decisions transparently, like explain the why behind pivots or trade-offs, especially those that relate to social impact, and definitely invite input. Even you as a founder ultimately decide, because that builds ownership as well. And I mean, surveys are great. I think, not sure you need surveys for 4 people, but maybe just every, you know, 4 to 6 weeks, ask each team member privately, like, do you feel connected to our mission? You know, do you feel like your work here makes a difference? Is there anything that we should do differently as a team? You know, and then write out their answers. And if the answers change over time, that's obviously the signal to adapt. So I think the early team is not just executing, they're actually shaping your company DNA. So just focusing on connection over complexity and clarity over structure. You know, I think that's how a values-driven culture just starts building itself long before your organizational chart grows.
Thank you, Margaret. Sophia? Can you hear us, Sophia? You're probably speaking, but you haven't unmuted yourself, so maybe try and click on the mic. If that's not working, don't worry, we'll circle back to you. Jeff, would you like to? Yep, Sophia's back as well. Sophia,
Yep,
can you
good.
hear us? No, Sophia is not. Try and leave the conversation there and come back, Sophia, hopefully.
I'm actually back, if you can hear me now.
You are. Brilliant. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Some technical issues. Yeah. I think if you have a distributed team, irrespective of the size, you have to be aware of the conversations that aren't happening naturally. So if you have a meeting, it's normally with a set agenda, and if you were in an office, you'd probably have a conversation while you're making coffee, or while you're in the elevator, or just walking to someone's desk. So there's a lot more space for spontaneous, less intentional kind of conversation, where you're talking about like what's been happening over the weekend, what's been happening with the family, your like house renovations or whatever else is going on in your life, that you wouldn't share in a meeting that feels a lot more formal. So I think you have to make sure that you create spaces where that can happen. It doesn't have to be something that costs money. It could just be that that you like have a meeting once a month with each person, where you just talk about your personal stuff. It can feel forced, but it can also just be prompted and gamified, like with something like Donut, which obviously you can do informally if you don't want to pay for a software license, but where you essentially ask questions, give a prompt for a conversation to make sure that people are not just talking about work, but they're also talking about sort of the other elements of their personal life, which just helps create relationships. Because when you have a distributed team, it gets difficult when there's lack of trust, right? If everything's going smoothly, it's fine. But as soon as there's an issue with like trust, then suddenly it's easier to avoid that person, avoid the conversation. And the trust happens when you know the other person as an individual, and you understand their intentions, and you know they are going in the same direction as you. So that's why it's important to know the person behind the job that they're doing as well.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Jeff?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think everything that these guys came up with, I came up with similarly. And so I don't want to waste time. I'd rather kind of move on to the next one, to be honest with you. But I think those were all great suggestions. The idea, generally speaking, is once you've defined your culture and once you've defined sort of the desired behaviors of the people in the organization, you just need to embed that in every sort of human ritual, that you've got, and then kind of invent some rituals like pub quizzes or, Impact Fridays, pizza and beer, whatever it is, and just say, hey, listen, let's do a bit of a contest or whatever the case, or call out people who basically exemplify those things. I think that's always ever really powerful and positive.
Thank you, Jeff. Louise, anything to add? Yeah.
Probably nothing to add, but just to add on to, I suppose, I think communication's been talked about a lot. One of the very practical pieces of advice I'd have is to over communicate when you're on a remote team. So what might land well and very clearly face to face often needs over communication when it comes to remote teams. So you might have to communicate something in a number of ways, particularly if you've got different time zones. So using things like newsletters or recording calls and making those available afterwards, but just considering that it needs to be communicated a lot more. And I think talking about your values, which obviously matter a lot, I can see from the questions, thinking about, are they operationalized? Are your values things that actually are helping people to make decisions when other people aren't available or you're not on a call together? So that's really leaning into the idea and the concept of asynchronous working. And one of the other things I'd add on to comms really is actually documenting this stuff. I think when teams are very small, we have a tendency to assume that everybody knows, but we all have different communication styles. And for some people, actually seeing it written down gives them permission to make a decision, to take an action without needing to be on a call or with a team member. And I think, look, a big, differentiator and advantage that you have, as I don't know whether you're a social enterprise, but certainly on the social impact side and working with charities is storytelling, right? The ability to actually unify people by telling them stories about the people that you support, the impact that might have, and that tends to be something that is really highly engaging. I think consistency when it comes to comms as well. Think about your comms framework. How often are you meeting? What are the purpose? What's the purpose of those meetings? And like others have said as well, how can you build in getting to know each other, without it feeling forced as well and having to have an agenda for that? Some really practical ideas that don't have any cost to them. Spotlight sessions are great, right? Get people talking about what are their interests outside of work, what are the skills. We had a guy in a business I worked with who did ultra marathons, right? But he did the spotlight session around resilience and mental strength and what tactics he had to implement to be able to keep going. So everybody's got their own history, their own background. That's always really interesting. And equally you can do that asynchronously, right? So you can do a bit of an anonymous who am I, right? That's shared by email, talking about here's how to communicate with me, here's my pet peeves, here's whatever it is. That always makes for a bit of fun, but also getting to know each other too. And I think, in terms of feedback, and surveys are great. The one thing I would say is, as somebody else has said already, how can you actually have one-to-one conversations? So considering that we all communicate in different ways. Some people prefer a group setting, a one-to-one, a survey. I would use as many of those ways to capture feedback as you can, but seek out objectivity, right? So especially as you grow, when you've got a small team, you know them really well. Don't forget that you are, I assume, a founder or a CEO, right? You're always going to hold that weight in somebody's mind when they are providing feedback. So if there's any way that you can bring objectivity into that, by getting somebody else, somebody, you know, who doesn't sit in the team, you know, someone in your network to come in for an hour and do something like a skip level meeting with your team to just really deep dive on what's going on. And again, like somebody else said, what's not being said. That really requires someone who maybe is not the CEO sitting with them. So yeah, loads of ways. You don't need to spend money. Constraint breeds creativity with these things.
Thank you very much. Quick intro, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Louise. That's okay.
Yeah, Matthews, I own the Culture Craft. And we build culture for our clients using product principles. We use Agile Scrum, so it helps us deliver in short, sharp sprints for all of the constraints we've just talked about, budget, time, people that exist.
Good stuff. Well, thank you very much for that, Louise. And if you'd like to be on the panel, please feel free to send me a LinkedIn invite. But this month, I think there might be room next Monday. Otherwise, we maybe can look at some Monday in October if you wish.
That sounds great. Thanks, Anton.
And thank you very much for joining us. Right, people, we've got 15 minutes to go, which means we probably have time for one or two more questions. I can see you have decided to be bleeding shy today and not cross the river from the live streams onto our call here directly on Microsoft Teams. But I promise you that if you do that, this will make for a more interesting conversation, and also you'll get much more help and value out of it. Nevertheless, we're here to help founders with whatever questions you have on your talent journey, whether you want to know how and where to find the right people, perhaps how to interview them or how to assess them, or maybe their background checks, or you've just heard us talk a bit about culture, how much to pay them, and all that jazz. There literally are no wrong questions, and there's no need to be shy. If you do want to ask us something, jump onto the call here on Microsoft Teams. You can either click the links on those live streams or simply go to our website, startup2scaleup.club, and find today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 165. You click join. It's a quick registration. That gets you a link to your email, and through that link, you can join our call, which is audio only, by the way, which means you can do that from anywhere via any platform or device. Now, we'll go on to our next question. This is, okay, Leicester. We're running a bootstrap legal tech startup in Leicester where we're building AI-driven document analysis tools for small law firms. I face difficulties nurturing leadership capabilities in our team due to limited mentorship resources. Given that our team is relatively inexperienced, what foundational leadership skills should we focus on developing to prepare team members for future managerial roles? Furthermore, how can we assess the impact of these development efforts on their performance and potential without relying on costly external assessments? That's interesting. Maybe we can start with Margaret, then we can go to Sophia, then Jeff, then Sarah, and if Louise would like to add anything as well, please feel free to. If we can, let's try and keep it to a minute each, please, team.
Sure.
That would be great. Take it away.
Okay, so I mean, I think firstly, you to the person who asked the question, you're asking the right question at the right time, because early stage leadership development is less about titles and more about mindset and behavior. So even in a resource constrained environment, you can definitely cultivate those strong future leaders. From within, you just take some intentional focus. So firstly, I would start with some very simple high leverage capabilities that serve both now and later as your team scales. So ownership and accountability, training your team to think beyond their immediate tasks. So for example, asking what's the outcome, not just the output. You would want to encourage them to define success criteria for their project and also create space for, as you do in engineering, for retrospectives after launches to reflect on what went well and what didn't. Also, most leadership issues come from communication breakdown. So encourage concise updates, asking for clarity before diving into details, and also normalize giving and receiving feedback, even peer-to-peer, Also, future leaders need to get good at making decisions with imperfect information. So let junior team members make small decisions on their own, and then you can reflect together on outcomes. And you can also share how you as a founder approach trade-offs, especially when balancing, legal accuracy with product speed. And also what's really important, like emotional intelligence and self-awareness, right? So you can maybe model reflective questions like, how did the decision land on your team, or what assumptions are we making here? So, and then in terms of those other questions, like, formal mentorship. I don't think you necessarily need formal mentorship to build leadership capacity. You can do some like leadership rotation, have team members take turns leading stand-ups or retros or internal demos. You can have a 30-minute monthly chat to discuss maybe a short podcast or an article. Like, for example, just thinking of newsletters, like Lenny's newsletter is a really good one, or Harvard Business Review Idea Cast. And you can also have like this mini mentorship. So maybe you or a senior team member can have monthly 30-minute development chats with each future leader focus on growth and not delivery. And just the last question, I don't think you necessarily need a pricey assessment, especially at this stage. So you can just use very light touch methods to track impact. So firstly, project-based indicators, right? Like, are they delivering work on time with clarity and increasing autonomy? Do they take initiative? Do they unblock themselves or others? Can they scope and like own small features from start to finish? And also peer feedback, right? You don't need a 360-degree tool. You can just ask, like, how has it been working with, XYZ? So what could they have? Yeah, what could they do more of? So yeah, I know it was a little bit longer, but there were a lot of questions included in this one.
Indeed.
Question.
Thank you very much, Margaret. I think we said Sophia, then, or did we say Jeff? Either of you, and then Sarah. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think really what's important at the early stages is the relationship. So if you are the person that's leading the people function or the talent function, it's important that you have a good relationship with each of those leaders that you're trying to develop, because they all want, everyone in the company needs psychological safety, right? So we need to identify what are the challenges for them, what are the challenges for their direct reports, and in order to do that, you have to talk to them. And a lot of the times, that communication is really the first step to seeing, okay, what can be done. And oftentimes, these people will have ideas themselves, and sometimes those conversations will give you the insight into who needs the most attention, because they might be the least self-aware. And then you can sort of take the role of a coach yourself. Obviously that'll be limited, but there is a surprising amount of opportunity just from having those conversations and talking about things that are outside of what they're thinking about immediately. Yeah, right. So, for example, if something goes wrong, if the project's gone wrong, and they're upset about a team member that didn't take ownership, you can be like, okay, cool. Did we actually define what is the successful end result here? What is the alignment among the team for what the process should look like? How could you have supported them? How could you follow up in between? How do we make sure that that this doesn't happen again in the future? Sometimes these conversations just don't happen because no one's initiating them, but that doesn't need a professional coach who can have that conversation. So a lot of the time, it just needs someone to own initiating a conversation. Really, is what I'm saying.
Well, I'll just jump in real quick, Anton. Yeah, look, I mean, each one of those were brilliant contributions. I kind of boil it down to this. Look, leadership at this level with a company this size, and with you guys at the particular phase you're looking at, does not need to be exquisite. It does not need to be elegant. It does not have to be perfect. What you do need to do, however, is to kind of build the muscle, if you will, around this whole issue. If you can kind of think about it from a fitness perspective, it's sort of like building your core, from which, of course, then all other capabilities will emanate, right? your legs get stronger, your arms get better, you get better coordinated and so forth if your core is good and strong. So I think the three things that you probably want to focus on from a leadership and managerial capability perspective would be three things. So self-awareness, kind of really understanding who you are, but more importantly, how it is you're perceived, and what your strengths and potential developmental gaps are, and basically kind of work with somebody, a peer that you trust, who cares deeply about your improved outcome on what kinds of activities, exercises, whatever the case, you can engage with, ultimately to kind of develop more thoroughly. Communication is critical, right? Learning how to communicate like a leader, like a manager, is really important. Not to be dictatorial, not to be authoritarian, but to be much more kind of inspiring in terms of getting people to wake up and go beyond themselves and their own perceptions of themselves and their capabilities, and help direct at the same time, but not to be over directive or micromanaging in terms of your approach. And then I think I've heard this before, decision making and accountability is really essential. Leaders have to live the values. They have to live how the company is ultimately going to grow every day in every conversation, right? Not to kind of sound like some kind of a robot saying, well, I'm a leader and a leader would say this, but just basically show people, look, this is how I deal with tough stuff. This is how I deal with stressful conversations. Here's how I manage conflict. Here's how I feel and how I work through being overworked and burned out, these kinds of things. But decision making is also critical. Be consistent, be in line with cultural values, be in line with your mission and vision always. I might suggest too that there are actually some, I know you guys were talking about being inexpensive, or not really having the cash to kind of go and spend a lot of money on fancy assessments. There are tools out there that are actually really inexpensive, that are super helpful in organizing, getting 360-degree feedback and assessment. I'll include those in the notes in the chat. Okay, so I will hand this back over to whoever's next.
Jeff, would you mind doing that actually in the LinkedIn live stream, if that's okay? So if you go onto LinkedIn, you'll see that you've been tagged on the live stream, and if you wouldn't mind, that would be great, because that way more people see it. Otherwise here it's only the ones that will look at the recording that will see these notes. Is that all right?
Okay, I'll send it to both. Yep.
Okay, even better. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Louise, did you want to add anything here? Okay, I guess not.
Me,
yep.
missed me. Yeah,
Sarah, I'm sorry, Sarah.
No worries.
Terribly sorry. Go on.
I agree with what everyone else has said, and I think the really good first step here is the fact that you recognise the importance of these things. Often in startups and scale-ups, people end up in that position of being a leader. They start as an individual, then they have to hire someone. And I think for me, it's just really taking the time to assess the motivation and the interest from the individuals to even become a leader. It's not for everyone. And you might be able to structure things slightly differently if you've got a great technical person, for example, and you don't want to lose their skills, but maybe leadership isn't actually what they want to do or what they would be best at. So maybe consider, do they actually need to be a full-time manager at your scale, or could they be a team lead, for example? A team lead meaning that they're looking at goals and projects, directing the work, but not, for example, getting involved in performance and pay decisions. So just take some time to think about that as well as you're thinking about, building the teams and building out the structure of the company. It's always good to just start with some of those basics, in addition to, what everyone else has said as well.
Thank you very much. Louise, did you want to add anything?
I would just build on, again, look, the leadership capability framework is probably a starting point. I would advise. It does not need to be complex, and I think this is where product principles become quite helpful, actually, because you don't want to aim for or claim perfection, but actually just implementing something, starting with a very high level. Here's what leadership capability looks like in our business. For me, that's for everybody in the business. Everybody has the ability to lead, so you don't need to, I suppose, target this to a specific group of people that you think are your next set of managers, but something that could be launched, a very high level framework around leadership capability. In terms of how you then build that capability, I think in those early stages, you're very much in that taking the horse to water, right? Because you're just so limited on time, resource, everything. One of the things that I've done that has worked really well in startups is giving people access to whatever that budget and however small it might be for L&D and for leadership development, and actually helping them to lead on their own development, right? Get them taking the lead, and that will help you identify who really does want to progress and who sees themselves in those leadership roles, and then making a business case for, I want to access a bit of budget so I can do X, Y, and Z. And that's against that leadership framework or those capabilities that you've already communicated. And then mandating as part of that, how do they take that back into the business and help other people learn from wherever that budget has been spent as well. So you're really taking it full circle. One of the models that is really helpful that you could implement today that's free is the 4C model of best practice sharing. I can share it in here as well. But that's just, I used to do this with my own teams when I was in-house. It's just an hour a week of bringing a problem, any problem that there might be, whether it's people or anything else, and facilitating that as the leader in the room without giving the answers, and helping people to really build critical thinking skills, share best practice from what others might do, helps with decision making and speed to making those decisions as well. But yeah, there's lots of ways that you can start to pull from the talent that's already in the business as well without spending money.
Thank you very much for that. Now, we've only got 1 minute to go, but if any of you can stay, one more question and then we'll wrap it up. So this is quite an unusual one. And I'll say why unusual, because of the size of the team and the stage that they say they are. So I'm 1/3, so I'm assuming one of 3 co-founders of a clean tech startup in Oxford, currently in seed stage, focused on developing renewable energy solutions. Our recent growth, and then they put in brackets, landed major contracts, has necessitated a rapid increase in technical hires, and we're now struggling to establish a structured performance management system across a distributed team. And again, he's put in brackets, total team of 36, looking for extra 7. And that's, for me, it's quite unusual at seed stage. Given our resource limitations, what essential elements of performance management should we prioritize to maintain productivity and morale during this high growth phase? Additionally, are there specific low-cost tools or frameworks suitable for early stage startups that can help track and improve performance effectively? Again, the team here can see the question in the chat, but I've read it out loud for the live stream. So maybe we can start with Sarah, then Jeff, and then Louise. Sarah?
Thanks, Anton. Essentially, feedback it would be the thing that I would say is the most important. And this doesn't need a tool or a system or even a heavy process. I think that the more that you can give feedback and the frequency of that feedback is going to help you enormously as you continue to grow. And I think particularly in technical roles, including peer feedback as part of that process from day one to sort of build trust and create almost a culture of giving feedback at the time, in the moment, when things are happening, rather than actually thinking of it more as a process. That's what I did in a 30-person company. That was one of the first things that I introduced, and I think it's hugely valuable. I won't comment on tools because I'm probably a little bit out of date with tools in really smaller environments, but I know there's other people on the panel who can give you some guidance on that. But yeah, feedback, definitely.
Thank you, Sarah. Jeff?
Yeah, very similar to, kind of feedback, but I think the thing that I would kind of focus on is to create a bit of a framework that, again, won't cost you much, if anything, unless you actually do go get a tool, which I think would be covered based on the tools I've just posted on Teams. I haven't been able to post it to LinkedIn Live yet. But you want to focus basically on what it is you're going to basically assess people against. And I think the critical thing for that would be to make sure that you assess them on goals. that hopefully as an organization you're coming up with at the very top level, but also then people are laddering up to those goals to say, what is sort of the critical objectives I need to kind of help achieve these goals as an organization, and what is my part in that process? And importantly, what are the sort of key results I need to accomplish, to what degree, in order to kind of call that objective done effectively. That's objectives and key results. So I think the first thing you want to do is set up a goal structure and kind of discuss as an organization, what is it you're trying to get done by when, and what is the art of the possible versus the art of the wishful, and try to get down to a realistic level. I think the other thing too, similar to what you were just talking about, is this issue of frequent conversations. You don't want to do an annual performance review. I mean, those things are dead. You want to kind of like create a feedback culture that says we talk often and early and regularly about how it is, we're performing against the things we have to go get done. And importantly, we don't make it sound like a big brother exercise where people are getting, penalized, if you will, for not contributing, for not basically, achieving critical things. But importantly, they're being offered help. They're being offered support. They're being, asked, hey, what can we do differently to kind of make this work better? Where are you blocked? How can I lift that out of your way? And I think the other thing too is recognition. We're really big on handing out, seemingly negative feedback. You didn't get this done. Here's the issue. Here's the problem. Here's what needs correcting. Go fix it. Instead, here's, what about celebrating the heck out of the fact that you actually did get something done, and it was super impressive and a real effort. I think that's really critical too. So I'd say, look, go data light, but insight heavy, and really kind of create a culture that says we care desperately about continuously improving the way that we work with our customers and clients, the way we work with our vendors, the way we work with our partners, but most importantly, the way we work with one another. So I would basically call that out. But there's some very low cost tools: 15.5, PeopleBox, Leapsome. There's one called DIY Route, and also kind of other frameworks in terms of like Culture Amp and things of that nature. But that would be my 2 pence worth.
Thank you very much, Steph. Louise?
Yeah, I like Jeff's quote on annual performance reviews being dead. That gave me a bit of life on a Monday, because I was going to say continuous performance management is really the way to go. And in terms of feedback, one feedback model that I think would be a good one for you to start with, and there's lots online that your team can access, is radical candor. And that's really about people getting the process of giving feedback right from the outset, and being able to be direct, which you need to be because you've got to move very fast, but caring on a very personal level with the right intent communicated. I think in terms of goal setting, that I would be with Jeff, that's the starting point. And considering as you do that, how do you develop shared responsibility for the success of the business? So rather than dictating, here's what needs to be achieved, and you're going to be reviewed against that, how do you create a sense of everybody wanting to achieve that because they feel a degree of ownership? So when you set out to look at, whether it's business strategy or individual goal setting, how can you co-create that with your people? So one of the questions I would ask at every stage of whatever you're planning at a strategic level or operational, how can we ensure buy-in? And that is by getting people involved as much as possible. So whatever it is you're asking them to do, they see themselves reflected in it. They feel like, well, I always say people don't argue with their own data, right? So if they've been part of the process of agreeing goals at an individual, team, company level, they're far less likely to push back on that. And I always like to give something practical. And I think one of the workshops that I find the most powerful to do that is backcasting. If you've not heard of it, I've got a couple of things I can share afterwards in terms of templates. That's a brilliant way to get your team thinking about the future state, but also thinking about stakeholders. Who is it internally and externally that cares about what I achieve? So that's a good one to start with goal setting.
Well, thank you very much for your great advice. We are now 7 minutes over the line, so I don't want to keep you any longer, but if you'd like to give us any quick parting words before I let you go, perhaps we can go with Sarah, then Louise, and then Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Anton. Well, I think we've heard a lot about sort of leadership and performance and frameworks today, and I think all of these things are really important things to prioritize, especially at the early stage, because if you build it as you want it to be, then you're much more likely to get there and to be able to continue with it. So I think there's been some great call outs today, for sure. But I think that the takeaway for me is keep it simple. You don't need to have really heavy processes or lots and lots of tools. Sometimes just a Google Doc and having that conversation, it is the best starting point. So always think, can I do this in a simple way, because that will ensure that you can do it more efficiently and more effectively, especially without needing to spend too much money.
Thank you, Sarah. Louise?
I would just say don't over engineer. I know myself going out into building my own business. If I didn't know, or I wasn't a subject matter expert in sales or marketing, whatever it might have been, I had a tendency to get stuck and overthink and over engineer. People and culture does not have to be complex. Leadership development does not have to be complex. Done is better than perfect. So yeah, we've talked to a lot of tech companies here. Take those same principles that your engineering teams use in terms of delivery, and consider how you can apply those to keep it simple.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Jeff, please.
Yeah, I mean, those are all brilliant contributions, and I totally agree. This is, again, going back to that exercise analogy. You don't need to join an expensive gym to get in shape. You need to do sit-ups, you need to do squats, you need to kind of do push-ups, you need to do all these different types of exercises, all of which you can do literally at your home, next to your bed, to start building and getting strong. You don't need to have, whatever it is, 6-pack abs or whatever the case tomorrow. You just basically need to slowly start building fitness up toward that. And that's exactly what I think everybody's saying. Don't spend loads of money. You don't have to get fancy tools. You just need to start talking to one another. You need to kind of start agreeing where it is you're going as a team, why it is you need to go in that direction, how it is everybody can contribute to that direction. And I think that's what we heard a lot of today. And I love the fact that people are talking about leadership and performance very, very early on in the organization, and culture, importantly. All of those three things, culture, leadership, and performance, are the building blocks, and I think are essential to the success of any young enterprise, of any enterprise generally. And you don't want to lose that muscle once you start exercising it. Just make it kind of core to everything it is you guys do. It's going to then hopefully help your organization succeed even through the worst of times.
Thank you very much to you all. I really appreciate your time and wisdom today. Apologies that we've kept you 10 minutes over the line. Actually, it's my fault because I was almost 10 minutes late by the time I managed to connect it to the reconnect it, because it was initially connected, but for some reason it keeps tripping. So, couple of things from me. We run 6 regular sessions helping founders for free, with some amazing panelists and mentors. They are, as you saw today, talent on Mondays, product and tech on Tuesdays, meaning, building that early stage from product roadmap to launching your MVP and beyond, for that matter. Wednesdays it's growth, so sales, marketing, all that jazz. Thursdays it's fundraising, so grants, investment, crowdfunding. And then the second Friday of each month, it's UK Startup Law. And third Friday of each month, it's UK Startup Finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time, and they're all available on our website, startuptoscaleup.club. Those of you on the live streams, please don't be shy. Next time, do join us live directly and interactively here on our Microsoft Teams calls. They're audio only, but the thing is, we can't monitor your questions live on those live streams. So if you do want to get some help and you want to get some tailored advice to you that works, you'll need to be with us here on Microsoft Teams. Hopefully you'll be able to join us tomorrow for Startup Product and Tech Q&A. We've got some amazing techies and product people. But as far as my parting words for today are concerned, as always, just remember the startup journey can be both exciting but also quite challenging. So try to have some fun in the meantime and be kind to yourself and everyone else for that matter too. Otherwise, have a great afternoon and God bless you all. Bye-bye for now.
See you guys.
Bye.